Ryan, how's it going, brother?
Alexander, how you doing, buddy?
Fantastic, man. I actually got a wedding this weekend, so Wednesday's my last day in the office. So we're up and at it. Trying to
Nice.
start strong the first couple of days.
Fantastic.
Brian, man, I've researched your story and I love it. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you've been up to over the last couple of years? Then I'd love to go back to the beginning, hear how this thing whole started.
Yeah, so today I'm co-founder of a company called GreenPal. GreenPal is a mobile app or website that works like Instacart, DoorDash, Uber, all of these apps that we use to get stuff done. It works for lawn mowing services. So if you need a grass cutting service, rather than calling around on Facebook or Yelp or something like that, you just download GreenPal. You pop your address in, you get quotes from lawn mowing services and gardeners nearby you, and you hire one right through the app. And GreenPal is a 11-year overnight success. My two co-founders
Jeez.
and I have been at this over a decade and have slowly grown the business to now nationwide. And every week, around 300,000 people use it to get this chore done. And we built it off of its own revenues, bootstrapped the thing, and didn't raise any outside capital. And so the first 4 or 5 years were challenging, but now it's starting to work and it's starting to grow.
So when you started it, were you doing an application or because 10 years ago Uber was still a thing, but everyone wasn't taking it to, get to the bar or wherever they were going.
Great question. So I think when you're starting a new piece of technology, you're building a new platform, authenticity can be kind of your competitive advantage. And so that's kind of how it unfolded for me. My first business was actually a lawn mowing business. I started cutting grass in high school and then I went to business school and mowed yards all day and went to school at night. And then when I graduated business school, I kind of had to make a plan. Like, was I going to go into the job market or stick with this landscaping business? And I decided, okay, I'm going to see how far I can take this landscaping company, and ended up growing it to around 150 employees,
Damn.
getting it over eight figures a year in sales. And then it was acquired by a national company that operates in the landscaping business. And after that, I took about a year off and I thought I was going to like live the good life, whatever that is. And I got bored really quick. And I decided I needed a new project. I needed a new thing that was the reason why I got out of bed in the morning. And I remember very clearly I watched the movie the Social Network, and that looked cool to me. I think Zuckerberg and his team built Facebook in about 20 minutes, and so I was allured. I was like seduced by the idea of being a tech founder, and it was very much naivete as an asset. But
Yeah.
I saw the problem every day running a landscaping business, how inefficient it was for homeowners to quickly get pricing and quickly hire the best fit contractor to take care of this chore. And then I also saw how challenging it is for a small mom and pop lawn mowing service, landscaping service to operate their business, that they didn't have the tool sets that they needed to run an efficient lawn mowing business in 2013 at that time. And then Uber was kind of coming onto the scene, and Airbnb, and these were kind of new companies that connected buyers and sellers at a local level. They validated to me the idea that yes, this will work for this industry that I know.
So
And
did
so
you
that's,
have that idea? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but did you have that idea kind of like before you saw some of these other like sharing models coming up?
for me, it was like the only thing I did have going for me was that I did know that there was a problem and that technology could help solve it. Because running my landscaping company, as we grew to over, 50, 75, 100 people, we no longer did the basic services that most homeowners need because they were just the economics didn't make sense for us. We would
Hmm.
do large apartment complexes and office parks, things like that. But people would still call our office every day. Sometimes as many as 30 or 40 of these calls a day
Mm.
asking us, hey, come cut my grass. I saw your trucks on Main Street. And we would refer those phone calls out to smaller providers. So in effect, in kind of in analog, we were this referral service. And I knew that a platform, if buyers and sellers would participate in it, could actually do business more efficiently than they were doing at the time. And so that was the only thing we had going. We didn't really
Mm.
know how to build a website, how to build an app, how to execute all of the technology, and then also how to grow and market and distribute the thing. We had to kind of figure that stuff out on the fly just through trial and error.
Mm. So take me back. Let's go back to the first business because You said you kind of were like the kid who did the lawn care business and just never stopped, right? uh, eh,
That's a good way of putting it.
what I tell people all the time, like if you're going to start a business, start a lawn care business, start a stump grinding business,
Yeah.
start something, because so many entrepreneurs, I feel like they have your second business ideas, right? But that's such a like a big elephant to chew down. Like, how do I even begin this thing? So what you did, I think, is intelligent. You start, I'm doing air quotes, a simpler business, and then you go, hey, I'm actually like an entrepreneur now. I'm a business owner. I've learned how to hire and fire and pay taxes and everything like that. But take me through the process of starting that business, and how does it go from zero to, hundreds of employees? Because as you sort of alluded to, most businesses in the lawn care industry, they stay at like whatever, 5, 10 people, or maybe even just a couple of people cutting a couple of lawns and making a living out of it.
It's a really good point. I think your earlier uh, comment. I think it makes sense for new founders to kind of get on first base and start a traditional, typical type of business. And a lot of service-based businesses are very approachable in that way. The low barriers to entry, so it could be lawn mowing service, home cleaning service, home painting service, dry cleaner, whatever. It's like cut your teeth on that type of business, and then you'll learn 80% of what it means to run a business, and then you could apply that to something that's bigger and more difficult to pull off. And so I agree with that. For me, I guess I had a chip on my shoulder that I wanted to prove to myself and prove to my friends and family that I could build something that was big. And it wasn't like I conquered the world or anything, but it took 15 years. But I built an 8-figure business in the landscaping industry, and a lot of it started off with me just wanting to prove that I could do it. But then after like year 4 or 5 or 6, and I got to maybe 3 or 4 million in revenue and 50 employees, the mission became less about me and more about my people that were
Yep.
working in the company. And that was really why I was putting in the 80 and 90 hour weeks, was because now I'm responsible for dozens of people's livelihoods. And if I don't give it my all and grow the company and increase our profitability, I'm not going to be able to give them opportunities, and I'm not going to be able to make payroll, which happened a few times. And so I think that's one of the really good progressions of the journey of starting a company. Is it's okay in the early days to start off with a chip on your shoulder and like a profit motive, and maybe you want to get rich, and maybe you just want to build something that's successful. That's fine. But I think as time goes on, as you move through the levels of the game, you kind of have to find deeper meaning in it. And for me, I hated the lawn mowing business, hated the landscaping business, didn't
Hmm.
like anything about it. But I did love my people that worked in the company with me. They were my family, and that's really why I did what I did, and that carried me on through year 5 to 10 to 15, ultimately to getting it acquired by a bigger company that could give these people more opportunities than I could. So that's kind of how I experienced it, and then it was exhausting running that company, and I really thought I was just going to like live the life of a capitalist, where I just make investments and sit back.
Passive stuff,
Yeah,
hear pitches. Yeah, that's what I'm dreaming about someday. Yeah,
yeah, that's what
scare
I.
me off that.
Yeah, well, it's like everybody says this, and it's easy to say, but like you kind of have to go through it to believe it and understand it. That that stuff ain't fun. It is boring, and it
Mm.
really is. It doesn't give you purpose. It doesn't give you a reason to go out and kill it every day. And then things get existential really quick, and you realize that you're obsessing over things that don't matter and that are trivial, and that you're actually wired and built to be solving bigger problems and challenges, and you're kind of wasting your life by not doing it. Anyway, that's what I experienced, and
Well,
so
that's an interesting thing because a lot of my friends, they talk about being builders. I've had a lot of people on this
yeah,
podcast where they go, "I love just like starting the thing and getting it up and getting it going." Just like you had an idea that didn't exist, and you're like, "I wonder if I can bring this thing to life." But being an investor, that's almost a very different like mental approach to life, where it's like I'm going to let other people start things, and then I'm going to pick the ones that I think are good and give them some strategic guidance. But like I don't ever get to bring the baby into the world. I'm just like at a daycare, sort of, if you will. So
totally.
it's interesting. I never thought about that.
And I think your best investors probably get that from building the operation around investing. Like maybe they
Mm,
get smart people around them, they
yep.
increase deal flow through a proprietary way, and they are actually building something. It's a machine that makes investments. But I didn't have interest in that, and I really thought I was just gonna like kick back, sit on the beach, and just let my money work for me. And I tried that for about a year, and I just became discontent really quick. And so that's what led me to the table of, okay, well, I don't want to start another like contracting company because I'll be honest with you, it sucked running that business many times, many days, many months, many years. It was really stressful, and I didn't want to do that again. And I thought, okay, but maybe I could do something interesting around the blue collar side of it that I know and apply technology to it. And it was very much I was naive. I didn't understand how challenging that was going to be to pull off. But luckily, I told two friends about it, and they're like, I'll quit my job and start that with you tomorrow. And so that kind of benevolence across the three of us is what got us through the first 3-4 years that were really hard, where we were having to teach ourselves how to write software, teach ourselves how to
Mm,
do online marketing, teach ourselves how to build a marketplace that satisfies the needs of buyers and sellers. Especially back then, there was no literature about this kind of stuff. It was just like you had to beat your head against the wall and just try to figure it out. Today, it's still kind of that way. There's more information about how to pull something like this off, but back then there was nothing.
mm,
And so it was. I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't want to have to do it again. I can say that.
mm. Yeah, I always think about that. Like if I was going to start a business today, it wouldn't be the same business that I
Right.
started 10 years ago.
Right.
Times have changed. You learn things, which may be bad advice because it worked. What you did worked.
Right.
But yeah, like it would be very difficult to do what we do now just because the market's so much more mature. Uh,
Totally.
But before we go and leave your first company, maybe just talk to me slightly about that transaction, that eventual sale. Like what did
So
life look like pre, during, and post that? Because that's the dream sort of for business owners. Like I sell my company, but I've heard it from other entrepreneurs. You do it, and a little bit of like the meaning of everything has been taken away from you.
yeah, that's a very good point. For me, so ideally, if you want to sell your business, maybe you're doing $1 million a year, $10 million a year, 50 or $100 million a year. At that kind of like small mid market, it's kind of the same kind of strategy, and ideally, you work an exit plan that is a 5 to 10 year plan, and you're kind of uh, beginning with the end in mind. Like you are like, okay, this is what a sale 5 years from now looks like, and these are like the million things I have to do to get there.
Mm,
And so you're proactively working that plan to get to that goal line, because a business that is sellable at that scale is very different than how 99% of entrepreneurs run a business at that scale. And
hmm
so that was the case for me. I was not building that business to sell it. I really believed that I was going to run that thing for 20 more years, and maybe hand it off to my kids or something like that, and because it was profitable and I was enjoying it. But something really happened. A weird thing happened at year maybe 13, where I realized something, that I was evolving into a whole new person every year or two running that company. So as you're growing a business where you're adding on 5 or 10 people a year, and you're growing 20 or 30% a year, you as the founder have to level up, and you have to grow, and you start reading books that you never would have read before. You start going to conferences you never would have gone to in a million years. You're learning things like leadership, management, strategy, ways to innovate in your little world that you're operating in, and so that's kind of like rewarding in a way. I didn't, at the time I didn't understand this, but looking back, I could understand that I was getting like fulfillment from evolving and growing in that way.
mm,
And then that kind of plateaued. That growth did, and I think the business matured in my market in Nashville, Tennessee, and so then I was kind of faced at, like, okay, now I'm going to have to launch another city like Atlanta or Birmingham or something like that, and I didn't really have the tread on the tires for that. I didn't
mm,
really want to do that. And so then I was kind of faced with this. Okay, I'm just going to keep it like it is and make it super profitable, and then invest a bunch in real estate, which is what I did for like 3 years. I would just take every dime I made and go buy single family homes, and that was financially rewarding from a wealth building perspective, but it wasn't like scratching the itch of, man, I'm doing things today that I never would have thought I could do 2 or 3 years ago. I kind of like reached this point of plateau, and that became very like I was very discontent for 2 or 3 years running the company,
Mm.
and I thought, okay, well, man, maybe I need to create the space to kind of do something else. I don't know what that is exactly, but maybe I need to create the space to do that. And so then I decided, okay, I'm gonna sell this business. And I heard of transactions happening in the industry, and I've gone to conferences where guys get up and talk about running transactions like that. And so I hired a consultant, and then a broker that operated in that space. And then I began to understand, okay, wow, there is a tremendous amount of work and rewiring and restructuring as to how I've been running this company for, at that time, 13 years. And it's going to be a lot of work to get this thing ready to sell.
What were those things that you felt like you didn't have?
Well, a lot of it is, the philosophy and how you run the business. So I ran it like the way you run a family business and the way you run like a business owned by private equity are very different.
Mm.
One is kind of from the heart almost, and like from the gut, and the other is from the spreadsheet. And I was more on like this side of the spectrum of running it with heart and intuition. And there was a lot of decisions I made that I thought were the right decisions, but maybe they didn't pencil out in terms of ROI on the spreadsheet. One example might be like, one time I was in Las Vegas, and I saw the Ferrari dealership in Las Vegas, and like their shop where they work on Ferraris is as clean as an operating room in a hospital. Like, you could eat off the floor, and like, to me, that was cool. That was inspiring, and so I then began to develop this belief that if we could keep our facility as like top notch and clean as that standard of quality would then permeate uh, into the culture, into the services that my team was executing. Could I close the loop on that? No. And could I measure that? No. But it costs about $100,000 a year to do that, maybe more.
Mm.
And so I could maybe have cut that out.
Do you feel like it worked? Did that work, you think?
I don't know for sure. I mean, it was that and about 30 other things we did to make sure we developed, good quality services for our customers. But it's hard to measure that kind of stuff. Do you repaint the fence at the shop? Do you give your customers free Christmas trees that spend a certain dollar amount with you every December? Do you do all these things that as a family business owner makes sense to you, but it's hard to like close the loop on the ROI on them. And so just the shop example, and I was spending 100, 200 grand a year doing that. Well, I mean, that cost me, $900,000 at sale, because you get a direct multiple on everything that drops to the bottom line. And they don't care about how clean your shop floor is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about how, what the paint job looks like on your trucks and things like that. And so the way you run a business as a founder that has pride in it, that really loves and takes care of your people, is very different than how like a PE firm would come in and run your business. And if you want to sell your business, you're going to have to run it like a private equity firm. You're going to have to run it like a McDonald's. And if you don't, then nobody wants to buy that. And then also you probably aren't going to generate the profits that they're also going to want to buy. So that was the main big difference, was the philosophy and how I ran it, and then also operations things, how we structured salespeople and account managers was different. And then there was all kinds of accounting things, like they wanted to see stuff in GAAP accounting, in which I had never invested in, and so it was about 2 years of work to get it ready to to be acquired, and then it was, and that took like another year, and so it's kind of weird. Like after I went through that challenging period, I almost fell in love with it all over again. So it's kind of a weird
Mm.
thing. But like you were saying, when you run something for 15 years, many of my people had been with me for over 10 years. This is now my family, and now they're not. Now it's like I'm no longer the leader. I'm no longer the guy running this thing. It's a very strange thing that nobody prepared me for, and it was a morose period. I think if you're running like strictly an online business and you're behind the laptop and you got a bunch of remote workers, maybe you don't feel that. But when you are in the trenches in a blue collar kind of hand to hand combat business, I definitely felt that.
How did you make sure that this new firm came in and took care of your employees? And did you do anything for your employees that had been with you? I think you said 10 plus years.
Yeah, it was it was very much part of the consideration of who we ended up going with. So
Yeah.
there were three companies that wanted to buy our business, and um, two of them were ran by PE, and by private equity, and one of them was public. So I knew that my people were probably going to get like hosed on that deal. And then there was another company that owned maybe 20 businesses of my size all over the country, and they still maintained the same brand after buying it. They had kind of the same philosophies that I had in terms of how they ran their business. I visited them at their headquarters in Austin and spent like 3 or 4 days with them, just observing how they operate and their style. And I was very much interviewing them, and so that was a big part of it was who I went with, and it didn't really maximize my ultimate inevitable outcome, but it did give me peace of mind that my people were going to be taken care of, and now they're more prosperous. Now 10 years later, running that small business in Nashville, then they're making more money than I ever did. So it worked out for everybody.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I asked that question because I have those same thoughts and considerations. Like, I don't want my employees to feel like Alex, brought me along to do this thing, built it with him for 10 or 12 or 15 years, and then he sells it and he walks away with a big pile of cash. But like, my salary is the same, or I don't take anything from that, or maybe even new guy comes in and he goes, "Who are you? What do you do? Why are you doing it this way?" And they're like, "Geez, this is just the worst of all." As opposed to they're really excited about being a part of something that built and grew and maybe sold, or maybe just kept on doing what they were doing for a really long time and at a high level.
Yeah, I get that, and you know, I guess what I would say to that is that as an employee, you don't have the sleepless nights like a founder and owner does. And I'm sure you there's been weeks where you couldn't make payroll, and you had to go into your personal assets to make payroll. That happened to me many times. So the risk reward and trade off for me, it kind of makes sense. And yeah, I mean, you want to include your people in the upside of the business and give them maybe a little slice of equity, but at the end of the day, it's like you got to remind yourself of the difference between being an employee and being a founder, and that's where the risk reward lies.
Mm. So post sale, you said you kind of just took a year off, relaxed a little bit, but then gets down to brass tacks and you decide to start this new thing. So starting an app 10 years ago is going to look way different than it started, today. Talk to me about where that begins and how you start to cut your way through that jungle.
Yeah, it's a really good metaphor. It is very much like chopping your way through a jungle, and you don't know if you're going the right way or not. And you just keep going without a loss of enthusiasm. And a lot of things are different today versus back then. I think a lot of the mobile technology has matured, and um, in some ways it might be easier, but in some ways I think it's harder. But the hardest thing, connecting whatever the hell it is you're building with people that need it, like the marketing and the distribution,
Mm,
that's the hardest part then and now. And
mm,
so and so those challenges existed then and they still exist now for any new product. And so that was the hardest part. And that was one of the things I didn't really anticipate was I thought the hard thing was going to be executing the technology, getting a mobile app into the stores that had a clean interface, that was easy to use, that was intuitive, and then building it all over again with a website and wiring all these things together and just getting something that worked. You listed your lawn, you got prices, you hired somebody, they came and did it, you approve it, you pay them, push another button, schedule them for the year. Like these were the basic pieces of functionality. And I thought that was the hard part. And then we spent like a year, 2 years learning how to do that and building that. And then I realized, no, that's the easy part. The hard part is getting people to discover this thing and getting people to know about it and to want to use it. And then like doing that times two, because you got suppliers and consumers. So it's like
Mm.
this weird problem, this chicken and egg problem. And like, I probably should have known this because I saw it manifest itself every day in Nashville. It's kind of this funny thing in Nashville. We get 100 people a month moving to the city that want to be the next, Luke Bryan or something. They want to be the next country music star. And so much like I went through, they believe that the hard thing is learning how to play the guitar and then or learning how to play the guitar and sing, and then learning how to play the guitar and sing and write songs, and then learning how to like do all of that. Having an image and a look. They think this is the hard thing, when in fact that's the easy thing. The hard thing is getting 100 people to show up at your show, and
Mm.
so that, or 100 people to like share your your SoundCloud or whatever it is.
True.
And
True.
so like that's the hard part of that equation. And starting a technology product that does not exist is kind of it's the same dynamic. It's the same.
Consumer education too. You have to educate the consumer on
Yep.
who am I booking? What's the company? Well, we don't know who the company is yet. You're like, I know.
All of that. And so the way we tackled it was we just started off really super small, a dozen suppliers that I vetted and brought on to this terrible piece of technology that we hacked together, and then went out and passed door hangers
I
all over.
heard you say you went from an 8-figure business to knocking on doors.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was very humbling. Very much like, what the hell am I doing? This is silly. But it was what I needed to do at that stage of the game. And maybe even personally, from a personal growth standpoint, it was what I needed at the time, was to be
Mm.
kicked in the teeth like that and to start all over
Mm.
again. Because maybe that's what I was in search of, was that grind all over again. I mean, I didn't enjoy any of it. But it was kind of what I guess I needed personally. And that's kind of maybe why I ended up there. And so here we are passing out door hangers all over Nashville, Tennessee, trying to get the word out about this terrible app that we had just cobbled together, and hustled up our first 100 consumers to try it out, and had 10, 15 landscapers, and just like almost like an emergency room hospital, just triaging around. Okay, there's a million things wrong with this piece of junk, but here's the top two, and let's just fix those, and then keep fixing, talking to users, talking to users, getting ideas for more features, rinse and repeat, keep doing that over and over again until you had something that worked pretty good. And then we started developing our strategy around, okay, how do we distribute this thing? When somebody's looking for a lawn mowing service in Brentwood, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Nashville, how do they discover GreenPal and find out about it and test it out? And so that was probably the first 5 years of this journey.
So to be clear, you don't have a tech background. I know you just said that, but did your two partners or founders with you, were they developers? Because this sounds like madness, brother.
It really was, and I don't recommend anybody try to approach it like we did. Maybe if you're sufficiently motivated, you can do anything,
Of
and
course.
which is kind of where we were. My two co-founders quit their jobs, but so ideally you get what Paul Graham calls this a hacker and a hustler. So you get the hacker who's just been nerding out building websites for the last 5 years, hacked together some kind of like blockchain project because they wanted to do it. Maybe they changed their grades on the school's website, when they were in high school. Like they just always have had the acumen for hacking things together, and have just been doing that since they were 14 years old. And then you get the hustler, you get the guy or gal that had a lemonade stand when they were 10. Maybe they also had a paper route when they were in high school. They dropped out of college to start a drop shipping business or something like that. Like they never wanted to have a typical job. They are a natural born entrepreneur, and they couldn't imagine living life any other way, and they are willing to do whatever it takes to push that project forward. And so these two forces come together, and 1+1 is like 5 or 100. And so most of the successful tech startups in the last 30 years have been that, the classic Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. That's what you want.
Mm.
Well, we had 3 hustlers. We
Mm.
had 3 guys with chips on our shoulders. My 2 co-founders were unhappy with their station in life. They worked a corporate job at Dell Computer in sales, and they hated it. It was very much like the way they described it was like the movie. What was the Mike Judge movie with the office setting back in the late 90s?
Office Space.
Office Space, yeah. And
Classic.
the
Great
way
film.
I mean,
Yeah.
they lived that movie every single day.
They probably called me because Dell still's calling me. I'm like, we're an Apple company, guys. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
so
Okay, well, if you ever change, Mr. Johnson, I'm like,
probably some of them, yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, every keystroke was measured, every mouse click was measured.
Mm.
They were just like monkeys at a terminal, and they hated it. And so that experience working that job conditioned both of them to do whatever it takes in life to work their way out of that.
Not
And so
going back kind of
not going back.
mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They quit. Then they quit and started this thing with me. And so it's like, okay, they were kind of like, they had their backs against the wall.
Mm.
And then me, I had already tried to like hang up my hang up my cleats and sit on the sidelines, and couldn't do it. And so, and then I was kind of benevolent to them because they believed in the vision. And so it was three hustlers that we kind of became half-assed hackers. And
Mm.
we went to YouTube University and just spent 10 hours a day learning and 4 hours a day building, and did that 6 days a week for 2 or 3 years. Most of the day was spent reading over blogs, taking online classes, doing online tutorials. And then the afternoons was spent like applying that, building stuff.
Mm.
And so we became tech founders through doing that. And that was what we had to do. You really have to have the ability to build your way out of problems at the core of what it is you're doing.
Mm.
Looking back, like trying to do something like this and not having the technical acumen would be like trying to start a restaurant, but you've never cooked a meal in your life that didn't come out of a microwave. It's like, you better learn how to become a good chef, to create recipes that will scale and repeat themselves. So that's kind of how it was for us. We tried to do it without learning to code, and then wasted 6 months or a year doing that. Then we just like kicking and screaming started learning how to do this stuff, and now we're still iterating and building on top of that foundation we built 10 years ago.
I got to ask the obvious question. You sell this business, ostensibly it goes well. Did you never just go, I'm just going to pay the money for somebody to develop this, and it's going to be better and faster and probably honestly cheaper than me spending 2 or 3 years of my time?
Yeah, that was tempting, because it really sucked, and
I believe it. Yeah.
it really was not fun. I think the idea, like, follow your passion, I think is bad advice, because I've never been passionate about anything that I've done in the last 22 years at a rubber meets the road level. Like, I never was passionate about mowing yards. I never was passionate about writing code, but I was passionate about achieving an outcome, achieving a goal. And so I think you have to find that. You have to tap into whatever that is. But for me, like, looking back, I don't think I would do it again like that. Like if Doc rolled up in the DeLorean and said, we got to go back in time, and now you got to do the whole thing over again. I mean, the first thing I do is I'd raise capital and I would just build a team around me.
Mm.
But I know everything there is to do, and so like I don't like it's like it's not a fair comparison, and so yeah, that was tempting back then, was to take the money I made from the exit and plow it into this, but I didn't want to go backwards, and I never wanted to pick up another weed eater ever again, and so that was terrifying. And then the other thing I did, so I remember the guy that bought the business. He was worth nine figures, and he was a pretty arrogant dude. But he said to me, after we got the deal done, wire transfers and everything, and it was very contentious at the end. There was a lot of retrading going back and forth.
Mm.
Almost didn't get it done.
Mm.
And so he says to me, "Well, we got the deal done, and congratulations. I didn't think we would get it done, but we did." And he said, "Let me give you a little bit of advice." And he said, "You're now you've got a little bit of wealth, and you now have this sum of money." He said, "Let me tell you, it's a lot easier to keep a few $1,000,000 than it is to make a few $1,000,000." And so that really resonated with me, and that scared me. That I didn't want to, like, I just almost like killed myself for 15 years running this business and building it and then selling it. I didn't want to like undo the hard work around that. And so I invested all of that in illiquid assets, real estate and stuff that I couldn't screw up. And so I was kind of like poor all over again, because I had a lot of assets, but I didn't have any cash,
Yeah.
and I had some cash flow, but I was reinvesting that too. So
Mm.
so it was kind of like my back was against the wall, and I had to start all over again. But I mean, that cost me 2 or 3 years, and I guess it all worked out. So I don't know that I would do it again that way, but that's how I approached it, and I guess in the end it did work out.
Yeah, I would think it would, if I was, like you said, that hacker who I haven't built a company before and I'm just like scrappy, I don't have any money to my name. I think that's the path that I would go. But now at this point, I do not think that's the path that I would go. I would pay someone else to do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like there's tech companies, and then there's tech enabled companies. So let's say you have a garage door business. I was talking to a founder the other day of like a garage door company doing $100 million a year, and like
Jeez.
they have techs
What are the
that go
garages
out.
made out of gold?
Yeah, I mean they repair and install garage doors. Isn't that crazy?
Good
And
for him, man.
and uh, and so they are very much a blue collar, rubber meets the road type of company. But he has innovated and made that thing run so smooth from a marketing standpoint and operation standpoint with technology. So in his case, he is tech enabled, and he's leveraging contractors and freelancers and things like that to make his business run smoother and more efficient. So that's an instance where I don't think you need to learn how to code, but let's say you want to invent a new product, kind of like us, that connects people with garage door technicians in a tech marketplace, and you're building that from scratch. I think I think you have to have builders on the team. Now, maybe as the main founder, you don't, but like your right hand man or right hand gal needs to be the hacker,
Mm.
because you can't just change order your way to success.
So a private equity firm, they might give you 500 grand, but that 500 grand's not going to pay a company to build it. They're going to hire 3 or 4 developers at 100 grand a clip, and then they're going to tell them, go out and build this thing.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point,
Mm.
it's like the founders need to get the business on first base. Outsource. You can't outsource that. If you're creating something from scratch, it's really hard to outsource. And again, change order your way to success, because there's a million things that are going to have to be done that you don't even know about. So you have to be able to like iterate and work your way through those very quickly in house. It's kind of like going back to the musician example. It's kind of like saying I have an idea for a song. Now I just need to go subcontract a musician
I see.
to bring it to life. And it's like, and then we're going to get rich doing that. It's like, no, this doesn't work that way.
It won't have the personality that you need it to.
Right. Yeah. And
Mm.
and that comes from the firsthand kind of experience and execution of the founding team. Now, if tech's at the core of what you do. If you're trying to build a tech enabled business, it's a different deal.
Yeah. Yeah, we're building an inventory management system kind of for our personal company. So that's really my only experience with building this thing. And
If
I
you were trying to build a inventory management system for a certain use case and you were going to sell that as a software as a service thing, different deal. But if you're solving your own problem, I think you can outsource that. And so it's just it's a blurry line. Um, but I've seen very few examples of new technology products where the tech was outsourced, that made it.
Hmm. Okay, so you start, bootstrapping this thing, scaling it forward. You've got your crappy product out there, as you sort of described it. You're
Yeah.
getting a couple of customers. How does this progress and become like a real business?
Yeah, it was very humbling and very slow. We were making $1,000 a month, at the outset.
And ostensibly, you're making your money by taking a little portion of the
That's right.
transaction from the landscaper.
That's right. It works the same as Airbnb or DoorDash or Instacart, where the platform connects buyers and sellers, and then there is a take rate, a vig, if you will. And so that's how
What's
we
Vig? What's
a
Vig?
vig, yeah, like or just like like a rake, or a take rate is the best way to describe it, and
Okay.
that's
Just never heard that term, Vig.
yeah, and so that's how we made money then. That's how we make money now, and that hasn't changed. But it's kind of like you realize that you're not in the business of doing anything other than spurring connections, and so that's a very different business than selling like a software as a service product, because then you have a product, you just got to go find people to buy it. That's not, and we had to learn really early on, that's not the business we're in. We're in the business of making connections. And so nothing matters if we can't drive like the liquidity of a consumer come onto the app
Mm.
and they get 4 or 5 prices really quickly, and then they hire somebody and then that person actually shows up on time. And so you have to get a lot of people at the table together in order to develop those interactions. And so that took us a while to figure out, but we spent 3 years in Nashville and got to the point where we had 1,000 people a week using it. And then we felt comfortable enough to roll out our second city, which was Tampa, Florida. And I personally lived there for 3 months trying to figure out how to launch another city. And then we slowly but surely built out a little playbook of this is how you bring GreenPal to a new city, and refined that, made it better and better until we eventually got it in several hundred cities. I think our last count was over 300 cities in the United States.
Mm.
And so it was just trial and error, putting in the reps, figuring out what worked, and then learning, and then rinse and repeat. And it's like building one of these things is not, like I said, it's not a linear thing. It's not like you do this and you expect this. It's like, it's almost like a farmer. Like you go over here, cultivate a little bit, and then come back and see what happens 6 months later. It's really challenging. It takes a long time. Luckily, we didn't raise any money, and so we could go at our own pace.
Mm.
And because a lot of companies that were chasing this Uber for X idea, Uber for car washing, Uber for laundry service, Uber for home cleaning, all of these things kind of were attempted, and they tried to go through this too quickly, and they tried to throw money at these problems, and they kind of crashed and burned. So we went slow and low and built something from the ground up that worked.
Sounds like you had a little bit of cash flow coming in, but what about your partners? How are they surviving?
It was hard. Roommates, $10 a day food budget, driving for Uber.
I gotta imagine it's a little awkward where they're like, "This sucks," and you're like, "Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not the worst I've ever had it, you know."
Well, I purposely and intentionally tried to. It was good for me. I tried to live personally modest in a modest way, because I knew that if I pulled up in a brand new car to the office, that would create animosity and would inhibit us getting where we were trying to go. So I kind of limited that, and still do, and because I did the opposite of that when I was running my first company. I had a bunch of cash and bought everything and realized I didn't need that stuff. So that was kind of a natural progression. So that wasn't a big deal, but yeah, they suffered big time. And it wasn't until like year 2 or 3 where we were able to pay them a real salary,
Mm,
and that was, they were making, they were making half what they were making at Dell, but at least enough to get by. But we all believed that if the numbers, if we could just double the numbers and then double them like 3 more times, we would have something. And so we could all see where it was going, and the numbers were small, but they were growing,
mm,
and so that kind of gave us the belief to keep on going.
So talk to me about what the company looks like today.
Yeah, it's still a small business, around 50 people,
50?
and
Nah, I don't know, man. That's not that small.
yeah, it's about as big as I want it to be. In fact, I'd like to make it smaller. I'm looking for ways to, in terms of headcount. I want to grow sales, obviously, but I'd like to do more. I'd like to have more revenue per employee, and so we're looking for ways to leverage AI and try to do more with less, and so that's where we're at today, and still growing 20-30% year over year. And it's never as big and growing as fast as you want it to, but when you're self-funded, you kind of have to, you make a little bit of money, and then you figure out where you're going to place your bets, and then you double down on the bets that work, and you wear this hat as a capital allocator. It's like a little bit of money comes in, and then I figure out where to put the money to work. It's very much like poker, and it's not like chess. It's like you don't know everything, and you're just making bets, and you're
Mm.
using the money you make to make bets on what will work. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And then you double down on what does work. And it's very much what my life looks like today.
I have to imagine that there's a temptation to say, hey, it works for lawn care. It can work for gutters. It can work for windows. It can work for garage doors, right? How do you avoid that temptation to say we could launch into 100 different categories?
Yeah, it is tempting, and every one of the reasons we never really wanted to take on outside capitals, because every conversation always went there, and
Yeah.
and it was and too quickly investors would want to say, okay, well, yeah, but we need to like make this for all these other things. The problem is those people have never cleaned a home before. They've never mowed a yard before. They've never plowed snow before. They've never painted somebody's house for money before. And so they don't really understand that every one of these businesses, yeah, maybe like 10 or 20% of it is similar, but the other 80% of it is very different.
Mm.
And these are very, very different uh, problems that need to be solved with technology. So yes, you have an install base that you can leverage, but you really are kind of starting from scratch all over again. And for us, 300,000 people using it every week, we're still just a drop in the bucket.
Right.
I mean, not even a drop in the bucket. And there's, in terms of how many lawns are getting mowed every week in the United States. And so for us, our best thing we can do is just continue to chew through the white space, and continue to accelerate the flywheel in the cities where it's not that great. To be honest, like we have a weird thing where we're not like one business, we're 300 businesses, because
Mm.
every single city has its own overlap of supply and demand, and you have to tune that. And if you don't get it right, then it never takes off. And
Hmm.
if you get it humming, it grows itself. And so it's kind of like this reinforcing kind of flywheel where the more consumers that use it, the more lawn care companies want to use it. The more lawn care companies that use it, the faster the quotes, the better the pricing, the better the response time, which means more consumers use it, and so on. And so it's like you want to find that flywheel and figure out how to get that flywheel to grow, to spin faster. And so our time for the next 5 years is probably figuring out, okay, we just don't have as many transactions in Seattle, Washington as we do in Huntsville, Alabama. And why is that? Let's diagnose and fix that.
I gotta
That's
imagine it's a bit of a chicken and an egg, where it's
absolutely
like, do I need the customers or do I need the lawn care providers? Because if you don't have
absolutely.
one, you can't get the other.
It's a chicken and egg problem multiplied by every geography you're in, every little kind of like critical mass, like nucleus of like maybe 15 miles. Like a lawn care guy or gal isn't going to drive more than about 20 minutes to go mow a yard. And so you have to solve for that density all over the city, all over the country.
Mm. Well, I'm really interested in leadership. It sounds like you've managed and led some big teams, 50 and 150 people. What are some of your kind of core value ideas around leading people and developing teams?
I think it starts with um, like every founder, every entrepreneur gets exactly the company culture they deserve. And this has happened to me a couple of times in the last 22 years where I will be going into the office and I'll have this like knot in my stomach where I don't want to go there because there's a
Mm.
lot of people that work for me that I would never hang out with these people
Mm.
and I would never break bread with these people and I don't like them and I'm pretty sure they don't like me. And then I'll come to the realization like this sucks. Why is this like this? And I would feel like a victim. And then another voice in my head would say, you idiot, you built this. This is exactly
Mhm.
a reflection of you as a human being, as a person. You are getting exactly the company culture, the level of enthusiasm, the vibe, if you will, in the workplace that you deserve because it's reflecting you. It's reflecting what you're bringing to the table. And so that was a realization that I went through a couple of times in the first business, and I had to work on myself and work on my own level of commitment, my own level of enthusiasm for what it was we were trying to do, and setting the standard for quality and what I would hold myself accountable to, and then hold everybody to that standard. I
Mhm.
think as the founder, there's a few things that you never can relinquish, and one is the level of enthusiasm and culture that everybody's bringing to the table, and then also the quality standard that you're holding yourself to and the rest of the team to. And so that to me was the biggest revelation that I realized was that there's no way to fake it. There's no way to shortcut it. There's no way to hack it. You have to really care. You have to really care about what the company is, what it stands for, what it's doing, and why that matters to your people. And you have to really care about your people's success. I mean, when you see them pull up in a new car, you have to like really get excited about that. When you hear about they're sending their kid to a school that is better than the one you went to, you should get excited about that. When you hear about somebody that's or you're a part of somebody that's working for you, putting a down payment on a house, and they're like the first homeowner in their family, you should be excited about that, and you should be doing things to make those things happen because your company needs to be a vehicle that's helping your people get where it is they're trying to go in life. And if you can really solve for those problems, it takes care of a lot of these other things.
That's fantastic, man. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You have to uh, be consistent with the standard that you set for people. One of the biggest things, and I tell people this all the time, is you can't do the rules for thee, but not for me. Like I've
Oh
I've
man,
I've seen that so many times. Well, I'm the business owner, dude. Like I can get in here at 9:30. It's like, well, why? Like not if you're telling everybody else they need to be here by 9:07 because 9:07's late. Like, you're not special. And people, and I tell this one to people, you can do whatever you want as the business owner, but people are going to say and think whatever they want. So it's
oh
which
absolutely,
one do you want? Because you can't have both of those things where you do what you want and people will think Brian's great. I love him.
yeah,
He's such a hard worker. It's like
ain't happening,
which one you want?
ain't happening. And yeah, you're right. You can't be showing up late and going home early. Um, if you're the manager and operator of the business, you should now. If you want to pay somebody to handle all that, and you're absentee and you roll in once a month, that's cool. That's a different deal. But most small businesses will never get to that point. And so no, you need to be the first person in, and you need to set the standard every day, or don't expect your people to do anything that you're not doing.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, this stuff is sounds simple, but it's hard to do.
Hmm. Well, Brian, brother, I appreciate you, man. This was a fantastic conversation. Where can people check you out and find some of the stuff that you've been up to?
Yeah, anybody that wants to check out GreenPal, just go to greenpal.com and hire a lawn mowing service in minutes. And then anybody want to hit me up, LinkedIn's a great place. Just Google my name in LinkedIn or Instagram. My handle is Bryan M. Clayton. And yeah, just drop me a DM on either of those.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that, man.
I really appreciate it. This is fun.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. Talk soon.